you'd like to contact the show, send us an email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com or follow us on any of our social media accounts on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Live on Four Legs Podcast and on Twitter at Live on Four Legs Pod.
I can see most people here, there. It gets a little dark in the back. Can you just lighten it up? I can check on everybody real quick. Everybody in the back? Wait, sorry, didn't mean to invade your privacy. I think there's two people fucking on the top. Just turn the lights back off, let them have their own night. Sorry. Might have been three, but I couldn't tell. And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Gentlemen! Mama Creed. Matt fucking Cameron in the drum. Mr. Boom Gasper! You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hey everybody now, welcome to Live on Four Legs, the definitive live Pearl Jam podcast, and if you have never listened to us before, well, I just said it, we are a Pearl Jam podcast that focuses primarily on their live show. That's why we are a definitive live Pearl Jam podcast. So what we do is we go and we take a show from somewhere in the band's catalog. Like this year, it's 2010, we're going back 10 years from the Backspacer Tour. Sometimes we go back to the early 90s, sometimes we kind of stick in the middle in the Binaural Tour. We try to hit up as many different eras as we possibly can, but today, Backspacer, and we're going to break down a great show from Newark in 2010. Talk about the songs, talk about the performance, and just basically, yeah, this is a great excuse to talk about Pearl Jam for about an hour. So Randy Sobel here and John Ferrer over there. Hello, good afternoon, good evening, sir.
Hello.
How is everything going on in your life?
Same old. We're stuck in the Groundhog Day situation, man.
We
Every
really
day is
are.
the same. So this is good to it's good to kind of get a chance to talk about this, break up the monotony a little bit.
Of
and
course,
this is a good one. We had Kieran, who won our last fan standing.
Yes,
His prize was he got to pick a show for us to cover, and this was his choice. So thanks a lot, Kieran. Congratulations.
And what I found out afterwards was, and we kind of went back and forth, the show that he really wanted was one of the Fenway shows from 2018. Those were our first shows we ever did because it was the podcast sprung off from those shows. So then he asked about this one, and I just assumed that he had went, but he's like, no, I just really love the bootleg, and I love I love the set list, and kind of one of the things that he said we have to talk about somewhere is the songs that were crossed off and the songs that were played in Soundcheck. So we have a lot of material to cover today because it's all, I mean, they're covering basically every era and deep within that catalog of every era.
And weren't there some noteworthy shows that happened right after this? I forget.
You teasing me or what?
Little bit.
Okay. Yeah, there might be one or two. There might be some one or two good ones, but yeah, we've covered those before. The MSG shows are, I believe, a day after this show was the 18th, and I believe the MSG shows were the 20th and 21st, and we've covered them before last year. If you weren't around to listen to this podcast last year, we did every single MSG show in existence. So, if you want to go into our back catalog and look for that stuff, that Night 2 episode is one of the best episodes we've ever done. Before we get into talking about the show, there is one thing I do kind of want to talk about because it's relevant to the concert scene, and really the concert scene is it's nothing right now, and it can't really be anything, and there's some places and some venues that are trying different things. And I got an email the other day, and it was, I get emails from different ticket companies all the time trying to promote their shows, and one that I saw was Dinosaur Jr. playing in a place in Connecticut that's a little less than an hour away from me, and I'm like, I'm really hungry for this. I'm hungry for some live stuff. I feel like if any time is a time to do it, it would be now. We're heading into winter. We're about to head into winter, so we really won't have the opportunity because there's not going to be any shows in any arena venues anytime soon. So maybe this is the time to get that fix. And look, I'm not like the biggest Dinosaur Jr. fan in the world. They have a couple of really great late 80s and early 90s albums that are fantastic. I really like. But I thought it was just a good opportunity. They're doing a socially distant concert. It's on a farm somewhere in Litchfield County, Connecticut, which if you know Connecticut, that's it's a very rural part, and it's expensive rural. But like, it's interesting because our spot that we're at, so every row has it's kind of like a checkerboard almost, where you're in a spot and then they jump a spot next to you that would be, the same amount of space that your grid is. They call it a grid. And that's where the next group of people are. So I decided, I'm like, all right, if we're gonna do this, we might as well be in an aisle, because if we're in an aisle, then that's less of a chance to be around people. So I don't know. What do you think of the concept? I think it's interesting. I'm willing to give it a shot, and I kind of want to just be a part of the experience to know what it's like to be at a concert during the quarantine era.
Yeah, I think it's just gonna be weird. Like if I had the opportunity to do something like that, it would just be surreal to me. Like, that is hoping it's temporary. I get it. They're doing what they have to do to survive, but I can't see that going forward as a permanent or semi-permanent option. I've been seeing a lot of things on social media, on Twitter, about like all these like independent venues that are in danger of closing permanently.
Yeah.
So definitely, if you're able, like, check into that stuff. I know there's a lot of fundraisers going around, like the Save Our Stages.
Save the Showbox stuff like that. Yeah. Good thing, but that
all around the country, all around the world, a lot of independent venues are in danger of shutting down. And like, if they shut down, like, there's going to be a lot of music that's lost. So
yeah,
if you have the means and if you're able, definitely check that out. But yeah, I think it's great that they're doing it. I think it's great they can do it. And it seems like they're going about and doing it the right way. I'd hate to think of anyone getting sick from going to a concert like that, but it sounds like they're taking all the precautions that they need to do. But I can't see that. It's just not for me. Like, I'll wait until it's safe to go back to the old way, because it just wouldn't be, especially like a band like Dinosaur Jr., where their music is best heard in like a small club somewhere, a sweaty beer and all that. Like, it just wouldn't be the same for me. It seems too sanitized for like rock and roll for me.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. But again, like, you want to make something work in the stage of quarantine, and Connecticut, out of all the states, it's one of the top states that's handled the coronavirus the best. So if any place is going to do it, this would be one of the better ones to do it. And that's why I feel comfortable going, because I know that they are taking the necessary precautions, that they said you can't eat any food or drink anything outside of your grid. You can't, you have to wear a mask everywhere you go. At the door, they're going to take your temperature before you come in. And if they notice you without your mask on, at any point, like, they can kick you out. Like that's just the thing. So I'm just interested in seeing what it's all about, and you know, obviously the live music is great, and getting a chance to get that for the first time since February is going to be nice. But you know, I want to be a part of that experience again, and this is going to be an interesting thing. We can't go to ball games right now. We can't do we can't go to bars and do the things that we want to do on a normal basis. But, you know, to bring this back to normalcy just a little bit, if this is the first step to get there, I'm on board with it. And, you know, maybe you tell your grandkids one day, like, hey, I remember 2020 and this is what it was like. And we had to go to concerts and we couldn't be near people. And who knows, maybe this is the future of how we handle concerts. And it would be really disappointing if it was, but we just don't know. Right now, there's so many question marks. We don't have a future point to look to. So, but
yeah, you'll have to report back after you go and let us know how it went.
I definitely plan to. Yeah, I think I'll use the social media pages as sort of a platform to show some pictures and some videos about what's going on, and yeah, I want to get people as engaged into that as possible. And also, if you guys have local shows around you that you plan on attending, show us too, because we want to see how it's all going down, and maybe we'll do a little bit of a discussion on that for some of our listeners at some point too. So, all right. Anything else we need to talk about? Anything good? Why don't we plug Patreon real quick? There's stuff going on Patreon, because there's always stuff going on Patreon. Last week, we released the South End episode, which is the first ever European show that the band did in 1992. I thought we had a fun episode, and we really got into some of the crazy things of that era before they really, really exploded. And, this is in February, a month before Unplugged, so this is prime territory here. They're gearing up for it. So if you want to check that out, we're going to have a Bridge School episode coming up pretty soon. We're probably going to have the Rearview Mirror Evolution episode coming up in, probably at the end of the month or so. And tomorrow actually is going to be and this is a little bit of a tease for next week here, we're doing our Neil Jam Forum tomorrow. So for people that are on Patreon, I know I've sent out messages. I'm sure you guys have gotten them. You guys, every fourth, the 4th of every month. Why don't you tell everybody what happens on the 4th of every month, John?
Yeah, because the podcast is called Live on Four Legs. So on the 4th of every month, we send all of our patrons a bootleg of a show that we're going to cover the next month, to kind of give them a chance to digest it and go through it, listen to it, and kind of let us know what feedback they have, let us know what they want to talk about. So it's a chance for us to reach out to them and get some kind of instant feedback before we do the episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and look, we love talking to our listeners, and I think they have such an interesting, and a lot of things that we've talked to them about have kind of sort of shaped how we think about certain things. It could be anything from their experiences to, maybe somebody knows more about the musicianship of what's going on, but getting all different voices in the room is always a good thing. So, tomorrow is actually going to be, a reminder for all our patrons. And if you do sign up to Patreon today on the 19th, we will send you that bootleg. So if you wanted to be part of the forum, you can. It's the Neil Jam show from Dublin in 95. So this is the Mirrorball tour, and there's not a lot of content that's been spread out about this, but the Neil group recently had a vote on what bootleg from their history. I guess his fan club, I don't know what his fan club's called, but they had a vote on it, and I'm sure it was very heavily Pearl Jam influenced, because the top 2 votes, I don't know how it worked, but basically this show ended up as the number 1 and number 2 requested show. So they released it to their fan club, and I got a handle of it, and it's something that I think most hardcore people have, and guys like Bagel have had it for a long time, and I'm sure you had it too, John. So it's just something that we wanted to share with the people. But that is part of the Patreon perk. If you wanted to be a part of that, head on over to patreon.com/liveon4legs, and yes, that Neil Jam episode is coming next week, and that is a part of our Around the World. I think we've teased it a little bit, just saying like, hey, like, we're going to be doing something really, really special for the end of the month and the Ireland show. So that's going to count as our Ireland show. Maybe it won't count towards our Live Footsteps stats, but it's going to be a really enjoyable show. I think we're going to have fun with it.
Yeah, where's that 25th anniversary mirror ball too? Like, give me some outtakes, give me some alternate takes, give me some, give me everything from that thing. Like,
yes,
I would pay top dollar for that.
I want Neil and Stone having conversations about writing music. Like, that's a dream for me. Like, have in between takes, like have Neil sort of direct or do whatever Neil does, because that he's in charge of the whole damn show. I want to be a part of that. I want to hear it all. So
yeah, give me a book, give me the retrospective, give me a movie. Like, oh yeah, that's classic era.
Yep. Yeah. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. A lot of great Mirror Ball songs, and it's all basically stuff besides Rockin' in the Free World. It's all basically stuff that we're never going to talk about, because it's Neil Young stuff. It's Cortez the Killer and Don't Let It Bring You Down, and those songs outside of the Mirror Ball are the classic Neil songs that the band was able to thankfully play for a couple shows on this tour. So that'll be good fodder and conversation for next week. Okay, so let's get into covering Newark here. We do have another, so this was sort of a double request. While Kieran requested it for his Last Fan Standing win, more on that later, by the way. We are doing another Last Fan Standing pretty soon, probably within the next week. So that's something you're interested in, hit us up. So Matt Thompson, who is one of our patrons, actually requested this show as well, and wanted to share a little bit of what he wrote to us about his experience of being in the show. So he said he was at the Cleveland show before taking off to New Jersey for work. I believe Cleveland, I know Hartford was on the 15th and Boston was the night before Newark. So Cleveland and Columbus must have been, I guess, somewhere a week before that, if I'm not mistaken. Does that sound right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's right.
So he said, decided to extend my stay and catch the Newark show. I luckily picked up a spare from the Tent Club message boards from a guy coming down to the Boston show. This was the best deep cut show that I've seen, with tracks like Alone, Supersonic, and Brother, the last time that Brother was played on this show. The highlight for me was a phenomenal version of Inside Job. The show gets some static from the fan base because the crowd was evidently lackluster, but I didn't notice, and I really enjoyed the show, and Newark is the reason why I usually try to hit the remote spots on a tour, since the set lists are more eclectic. And that's a really good point, that sometimes you do get a really different set in a place that, doesn't get as much attention. This is sandwiched in between Boston and New York, major cities where you kind of, while you have to play some rare stuff and give the crowd some gems, you have to play the hits on those shows too, because that's a lot of your crowd is going to be there for the hits. So for them to come into Newark and basically just, throw darts throughout their whole entire catalog, start out with a binaural song, play a ton from Yield, play a ton of unreleased 10 songs that were from the 10 era that are basically Lost Dogs, and some that aren't Lost Dogs, to play all of those, like, that's, you usually wouldn't get that from a show from a major city.
Yeah, just ask Moline and Greenville how that worked out for them, being kind of out of the way.
Exactly.
That's definitely something we've talked about before. But yeah, this is one of those things, man. Like, they know there's people from Philadelphia there, there's people from New York there. Like we've talked about with those Hartford shows, it's kind of an in betweener, and yeah, this is an opportunity for them to kind of just screw around a little bit. I think he even says at one point, like, "Oh, we're just making it up as we go along now."
Yeah, exactly. It feels like every every 2 to 3 song, like, it's just, something from deep in their catalog. Like, I probably haven't seen half the songs that they played on this night. That's how ridiculous it got. But even more ridiculous, you look at the songs that were left off this show. So Breath, No Way, Leaving Here, Gone, and Porch were originally on the set list. That's some pretty heavy hitters.
Yeah,
you talk about rare ones.
Yeah.
Having No Way crossed off, I mean, for a lot of people, that has to be a real just disappointment, I guess.
Yeah, and Gone too. Like, that's one that immediately off of Avocado that just never gets played. Like, it got played on that tour and then just got dropped. So that's right. One I would love to hear someday. Yeah.
Yeah, and even so, they were replaced with like Insignificance, Daughter, and You Are, and then the sound check included Thin Air and Man of the Hour, two that really don't get played a lot either, and they played Leatherman in the sound check, which they ended up playing in the show, which we'll get to in a little bit. So yeah, like this is a dartboard show where they're just kind of, of all errors, they're trying to get the best of stuff that fans can cross off their checklist, and stuff that people really enjoy too. It was an enjoyable listen.
Yeah, and anytime you start off with Of the Girl, you throw the playbook out the window. Like, you have no idea what you're in for at that point.
This is a special version of the Girl too. Like, I don't like to open the show with Mike just wailing on a solo like that. Like, it just brings such a smile to my face. Like, I can imagine just being in the crowd and just being like, this is how they're gonna start. Like I'm just mind blown, because usually they're easing into it. This is just it's so different because Ed, in a lot of, I want to say like 80% of their catalog, you can say that Ed is such a major focal point of the song. In Of the Girl, Ed takes the biggest of backseats. He takes a backseat to the rhythm. He takes a backseat to Mike just getting his platform. And it's really like Mike and Stone work so well off of it that Ed doesn't really need to do much more than he does.
Yeah, think about it too, and it's a good point, because if you think about the songs that usually open shows, you think about like a Release or a Long Road, like those are Ed moments. You think of like a Given to Fly, that's an Ed moment. A Corduroy, that's an Ed moment. Even like a Wash is more like a Stone moment, like Oceans. Those are not usually songs that McCready like stands out on, but Of the Girl, like even like a Sometimes is an Ed song. So a lot of the songs they open with are Ed songs, and that's a good point, that like Of the Girl is a chance for Mike to step into the spotlight immediately.
Right, there's nothing on Of the Girl where there's no minute where they don't sing like, oh, how he makes his that's not like a chanting moment. There's no call and response like Release, how everybody just absolutely belts Release Me, or how Wash, that Ed just shatters Wash My Love, that whole line at the end. Like, you're right, there is no moment for that. And again, to start off with McCready as your platform is so unique and so different that we say it all the time, that it's always gonna show you what kind of night it's gonna be when you open up with something completely different.
Definitely.
And really right away, look, you transition Of the Girl into Brain of J and Evolution right after that. That's like your 98, 2000 section really, really early on. You would think, okay, maybe they would get to, a song like The Fixer or Got Some very early because it's still pretty early in Backspacer's history here. But Brain of J just coming out of the speakers right away to get the crowd moving, and they were doing Evolution in that 3-spot a lot during 2010, which I loved. Yield songs in this show were a highlight for me for sure.
Yeah, they sound great. And one thing I noticed on Brain of J is Jeff's bass just sounds so good. You can hear all the little runs and everything he's doing up and down. It sounds awesome. But you reminded me of something too, Newark is basically right across the river from Philadelphia, if I'm not mistaken, and they had just done those Philly shows 6 months before this.
Right.
So those people had heard almost everything. So yeah, that's another reason they can go into this and just kind of just wing it and be like, hey, whatever we want to play. This might have even been like a Stone set list or something, or more of a collaborative effort. Like I'd go to the other guys like, hey, we were just here 6 months ago and played almost everything that we know. Like, what do you guys want to do?
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. And obviously with MSG coming up, there's going to be a lot of shared fans from MSG as well. So you're thinking, okay, maybe tailor those shows a little bit to play stuff more like Corduroy and other of the sing along and more popular songs, Elderly Woman and all those songs that they played at both nights at MSG. But you're right, this is a Stone show. I don't know how else to put it. It's mostly Stone songs, and it's mostly Stone spotlight, which we don't really get to see a lot. Of the Girl opening up, Brain of J and Evolution, where Stone has solos early,
right.
Following a song that Mike had a solo, and then stuff we'll get to later on too. It's a great way to start. Again, Evolution in the 3-spot. It's not something that gets done nowadays, but that 2010 they were playing around a little bit. This was really the sweet spot at the time.
Yeah, and even in these like quote unquote dartboard type shows, the deep cut shows, you still need those anchors for the people that are more the casual fans. You still need those moments in the set list where everybody knows a song and everybody can sing along and do the thing. And Evolution is there, there isn't really a crowd favorite song in the first 7 or 8 besides Do the Evolution. So I think it's needed here to kind of get people who aren't necessarily those hardcore fans, get them into the show early as well.
I agree with that, and I think that's a point that I'm going to bring up a little bit later in this main set that maybe that part was lacking. But yeah, like Evolution, you're right. Like it's usually played at most shows deep into a set, and it's used as kind of a rile up moment for the crowd. But when they put it early in the show, and it gets everybody moving, it's great. If you want a Corduroy replacement for this spot or a Hail replacement, it's perfect. So, and the crowd, look, I think from a lot of what I read about the show, everybody said, the crowd wasn't really that into it. Well, I guess Brett Eliason did really good with his mix because you get a lot of great crowd stuff at the show. And just the roar after Evolution ends is fantastic. You would think, of course they're into this. This sounds great. But there are also other moments that I noticed where they aren't into it as much.
Right. And then, the Fixer after the Evolution, I think, is a little bit of a letdown. So I think it's placed in between the two songs that I think are gonna get people going. So I mean, they'd been touring Backspacer for a year, so they kind of had figured out, which songs were going to work and which songs weren't. And I think the Fixer could have been a little bit of a letdown, so that's another reason to put Evolution there, and then to back end it with another deep cut that's going to make the fans happy, I think was definitely done on purpose.
Yeah, especially like you said, the Philadelphia shows. If those were the last shows that people have gone to, and they were at all 4, I think the Fixer was probably played 3 of the 4 of those shows. They were playing it all the time at that point, and you know how it is. Like, mind your manners. You know that you're getting it. So I don't want to say it's a pee break song because it's kind of in such an early spot that you don't want to use it for that, but it is a little bit of a disappointment, a throwaway a little bit early, but it is what it is. It's the era, and they're still on a high off of Backspacer, and a lot of people really do like Backspacer, so it works here. Should I mention that I'm a fascist?
Yeah, we did have someone on Twitter a couple of weeks ago who did say that this was his favorite song. Shout out to you, my friend. More power to you. I don't get it, but if The Fixer is your favorite Pearl Jam song, then that's fantastic. But
and he called me a fascist.
You took issue with that, didn't you?
Why was I don't see what I just said. I was just trying to put some sense into him, and I was trying to be like, okay, all of these other songs that are just like the most amazing songs in their catalog, like Corduroy and Hail Hail and Given to Fly, like those are, I mean, if I were to make a top 100 list, I don't know if Fixer makes my top 100, and they only have...
It's probably in my bottom 10.
Yeah, and they probably have, what, like 170 original songs roundabout?
At least.
Ish?
Yeah.
Yeah, Fixer doesn't make my top 100, and I'm sorry, you can't put it up there with the Corduroys of the world and rearview mirrors and things like that. So
some people are just into pop music, like that's just what they want. So Last Kiss was a number 2 single for a reason, man. That's just what some people are into, and it takes all kinds, man. If that's what gets you into the band, then hey, well, welcome. We're glad to have you.
That's okay, but I'm not a fascist for disagreeing with them and saying that the other songs are better.
I think he said it with a little smiley face emoji. He wasn't taking it too seriously.
Well, he lingered for a little bit longer than he wanted to. So anyway, we'll get off of that point. He's probably not listening. That's just my guess. But all right, Ed kind of talks here. Says it's a beautiful day in New Jersey. At least inside, because outside it felt like Seattle. And he says he's seeing license plates being held up, and he's anticipating that they have been stolen, and kind of mentions that they're going to be there a while. And you know what? I just thought about this now, actually, saying that it felt like Seattle, and getting a lot of these songs, just like Alone, that's right here. Do you think they had sort of the mindset of, it feels kind of like an early era day? It feels like kind of like a day that we would go play a show at the Showbox or Rock Candy or a venue like that in 92, 91. You think they thought
maybe
back to that?
They were just feeling loose and maybe kind of had a hometown feel to it. Coming off of a Boston show, and knowing they've got those MSG shows coming up, which are going to be a big deal, and there's going to be a little more pressure on them there. That's a bigger stage, and yeah, I can see where they would just use this as an opportunity to just kind of loosen up and, let their hair down, as you say, and, yeah, just kind of have some fun with it.
Yeah, and it's cool. Like, I love the placement for Alone here, because it kind of it comes out of left field. It's fifth in the set, and a couple of nights later, you would get Breath in a very similar spot, which is sort of like Breath is really, while you get that massive 4 or 5 song stretch early in that second MSG show, Breath is the moment that you're like, okay, this show is more than what we're getting. I think they definitely tried to mimic that idea that they were doing with Alone here, because you get this so early in the show, you're like, okay, if this is here now, and we got Brain of J of the Girl already, what the hell else are they going to throw at us? It feels like
definitely.
And, they wouldn't know this, but, there's so much more to come.
And this Alone is great, too. A lot of the later versions we talk about, it does seem kind of like thrown together, or kind of half-assed, if you will. Like, oh, we don't really remember this one, but here it is. But this you can tell they rehearsed it. It sounds great. Ed's doing a little vocal improv thing near the end. He does do the little outro vocal.
That's my favorite part. Yep.
There's an amazing mic solo. He really goes off kind of halfway through his section there, and it sounds absolutely great. This might be my number 1 moment from the show.
Wow.
Get through it.
Okay. All right. Let's see. We're only on song number 5 here, so let's see how everything plays out.
He reaches for and the water turns a red. God woken on to be burned again. This is for the New Jersey surfers. I know there's somebody out there.
The transition into Amongst the Waves, you wouldn't think that those two songs would work so well back to back, but they find a way to make them work really well. I was very impressed by this.
Definitely. Well, if I was there, I would have thought they were going to start playing all their songs alphabetically. It was like Alone into Amongst the Waves. You're like,
sure.
Okay, so here we go. We're getting everything.
All those yesterdays coming up next.
Yeah, it's going to be like a 24-hour show. Yeah. But Amongst the Waves, like again, this is going to be a theme too. Like the Backspacer songs that they play at the show are definitely the ones that hit live a lot better. They definitely picked the more fan-friendly half of Backspacer to play at the show.
Yeah, for sure. I think Unthought Known is probably the one that has stuck around the most. To me, I think Amongst the Waves is their best live track from Backspacer, maybe next to Just Breathe. But you know, you're right. Like, it's the best choices. You know, they've always struggled with things like Speed of Sound, and Johnny Guitar doesn't really resonate with the fans as much. But Amongst the Waves, you can put it in a set today, and this could be like the modern day Lowlight, where this could come back into sets and be there every other show, and I don't think anybody would have a problem with it.
Yeah, and it's another McCready moment too. Like, it's a chance, like it's to showcase his solo at the end there. It soars into another level. It just sounds like it just keeps going up and up and up and up. It's wonderful.
Right, and Ed's getting really intense on those high parts. I mean, you know, there's so many buzz phrases, I suppose, for the show, but like, I feel like the band is in the zone on the show, especially. Like, it just feels like they can't be touched at all. You know.
Yeah, it's looking at this little first section, like, yeah, it's so many ups and downs, and like, yeah, starting off with a binaural song, getting a rare song from the 10 era, new song like Yield. Yeah, this is a roller coaster of the first 7 songs here.
Yeah, and they find a way to make it mesh so well together, I think. And then, like, Immortality to follow that, In Hiding, Even Flow, those are songs you don't, like, this is such a different and unique way to get to Even Flow, because you usually get like a nothing man or an elderly woman or something that's really like a sing-along, a crowd pleaser. And, you know, Immortality is one that they can just wail away on. And again, Mike is insane on that solo. The way that he's playing on Immortality, very specific strumming that he brings back in a lot of these songs later. I don't know if this was something that was on his mind, but I noticed the similar tune and the similar tone, and I think he was doing that in Even Flow too. I don't know if you noticed that.
I did. I noticed that build up in Immortality with Mike and Matt playing together when they just kind of let loose and let it all hang out. It's one of the best things they do, and yeah, this song's incredible live. So and they. Not a lot of Vitalogy songs at this show, so you know, getting Immortality this early, you'd think you'd be setting the mood for some more later, but not really. But right. Yeah, this Immortality and Hiding Even Flow, it's a great section. I mean, they're all songs that begin with vowels, so they wanted to keep that going a little bit. But yeah, I mean, Even Flow too. Yeah, you mentioned that part of Even Flow. His solo when he first takes it sounds like an air raid siren going off.
Right, and yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You got Stone jumping around, like, then it gets really, really quiet, and like it's some really good dynamics in that. Yeah, I thought it was great. I enjoyed this whole section.
Mike's influences on that version of Even Flow are just stand out so much. That solo is like a Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Ace Frehley, like, just melting pot of lead guitar goodness there. Like, You know, that's everything he's ever learned put into that one solo. It just has that feel to it, especially Hendrix. It just, I mean, everything he does feels almost like Hendrix. So,
yeah,
you know.
I love it when he doesn't, and he does get a little like, you know, Van Halen-y finger picky, you know, finger tapping into it. But I love when he holds those notes and like really you can tell he's putting the emotion and the passion and the soul, you know, whatever word you want to say, when he's putting that into it, he really lets those notes bend and breathe, and like that's when I think he's at his best, when he's really finding his own voice through that guitar.
Absolutely. You always talk about how when he holds the notes, that's his soul coming out. That's his soul, you know, scorching or screeching, I suppose. Yeah, I mean, that's McCready at his best for sure. You mentioned the vowels, and this section is, I mean, there's 6 vowel songs in a row. Alone Amongst the Waves.
They cover them all in this main set. A-E-I-O-U. That's the lesson for the kids going back to school this week. Hey, there's your vowel lesson. They cover all the A-E-I-O-U songs.
Oh yeah, Unthought.
Yeah.
They did. Yeah, they did. I wonder if they've ever done that intentionally or unintentionally.
I know. And they bookend the main set with 2 songs that begin with O, which I don't think has ever happened. I can't picture that ever happening. Yeah.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know if that was by. I highly doubt that was by design.
It probably only occurred to me because I have young kids who are learning the alphabet.
Yeah, and you know what? Ed had young kids at the time too, so maybe it did occur to him. So, 2010, I think his kids were, you know, at least 3 or 4. So, Insignificance is fantastic from this show. This is, again, intensity is just another buzzword from this show, and Ed is strumming the shit out of his guitar, and they bring this performance is so electric that they'll bring it to the next night at MSG, which is not something they would usually do. There's a couple of these songs that don't get played very often. I guess they were really feeling this and You Are. They would bring back to that first MSG show. So yeah, like when you're on fire with some you know, it's like when you put in the utility player in baseball and they get a couple hits and you're like, all right, well, let's see if he's got more hits in that bat for the next day. You play him again.
Yeah, you go with the hot hand, and I'll go even further. I think those were put on there as a warm up to see how it went, and if maybe they were thinking about playing them in MSG. It's like, hey, let's throw them in there, see how it goes. If we like it, then we'll bring it back.
Right. And Insignificance, honestly, from that first MSG show, and I know we talked about it, it was during kind of a lull of that set list. I don't know if you remember that conversation at all,
yeah.
But yeah, it was mixed in with songs like I Got Shit and Down that really just didn't work too well together. But here, I mean, this is following Even Flow and following what you get from Even Flow, and then Supersonic is going to follow that, which is, you know, just a fun, bouncy song. Like it's much better placed in this show than it was at the MSG one. I do have to mention, we don't get this very often, but we get this on this song right here. John, what do we have with Supersonic?
Is this a Live on Four Legs debut?
This is a Live on Four Legs debut.
All right.
Yeah. Especially album originals. I think we're done with Backspacer now. We hit like the Johnny Guitars and things like that. I mean, there's songs that we've only done once or twice that we have to do again in the future just to keep sprinkling and mixing them in. But there's some Riot Act songs we haven't done, like Ghost and Help Help. We haven't done Arc yet. I think Rival was the last of the binaural.
Okay.
So is there another? No, because we did, Big Wave was the last one. So it might be those few from Riot Act, and that might be it.
Yeah, and we're getting it. We're gonna get it completed, sooner than later.
My goal was to try to get every song played once by the end of the year, and I know for a fact that there is a show that we're going to be doing later this year that has Ghost. So, and actually there's going to be a show that has Arc too, because I picked that for that specific reason.
Was Driftin' one of those two? We needed off of Lost Dogs?
Yes. We need Driftin' and Hitchhiker, and
Right.
Driftin' we're going to get to, but that's going to be a Bridge School episode for Patreon.
Right,
So
right.
if you're as much of a completist as us, then I guess you got to be a patron to get that. But
yeah, Supersonic. Like I want. This occurred to me when I was listening to it. We talk about how, all the talk was about how Dance of the Clairvoyance was a Talking Heads influence, and we go back and we talk about how Mind Your Manners is kind of a Dead Kennedy song, and Got Some that has kind of that Devo influence, and they've done that. In their later years, they've kind of taken inspiration from some of those late 70s, early 80s bands. And Supersonic, this didn't occur to me until I was listening to it. This is totally a Ramones song. Like I can totally hear it has that Ramones beat to it. It has that Ramones. I can totally hear Joey Ramone singing Supersonic. Like this is their take on a Ramones song.
Yeah, that's not far off. I can feel you on that. I think it's a little less four chordy. It's a little bit more of
the
guess
Ramones barely got to four chords. By the time they got to three, they were done.
But it's a little. I guess it's more mature than a Ramones song. Maybe it's a matured Ramones, but
like an '80s Ramones song.
Yeah. Maybe. Okay. Yeah, you might be onto something. I'm just gonna have to listen to it a couple more times and really figure it out. My whole point from Supersonic is just on the album, I almost have no interest in listening to the song. Like I don't know, it just doesn't hit me. But listening to a live version, I do get a nice little feel from it. It's a bouncy song. It's an energetic song. It feels like the band is having fun when they're playing it, and they haven't played it since 2015. So you really don't get much from it anymore. But it's quick, 2 to 3 minutes too. Fun. Also the only Backspacer song I haven't seen. So.
Yeah, I saw it in 2012, and it was great. It was they were playing a festival. It was just a quick 2-hour set, so you need those kind of songs sprinkled in so they keep things going. But yeah, I mean, I remember really liking it. Like it's fast. Everybody gets to go, do the hey hey heys, and yeah, it was fun. Like you said, it's not the meatiest song in their catalog, lyrically or musically, but yeah, it's kind of lighthearted and it's fun. It's it's like a Ramones song, and the Ramones were much better live than on record. So yeah, I'll agree with that. Sure.
Yeah, and a lot, like you said, Backspacer was just a very poppy album to begin with. It was just a lot of songs with just, I guess, catchy lyrics and just singable parts. Unthought Known is coming up later. The same kind of gist. That's just how they were writing at the time. And I think from what I remember, and I'm sorry if I bring up nostalgia here, but from what I remember, the Backspacer mentality was how it was because they were in a really good mood, because politically they could write an album that wasn't going to be about George Bush shit anymore. That they were feeling very positive since Obama took office in 2008.
Right, I think that was definitely part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't want to think of the good old days and the nostalgia and bring that up and make everybody feel awful about current state of affairs. But sometimes it just turns out that way. It just happens. So we'll just move along and get to the next song, which we have covered in our catalog before. You have to go all the way back for all of you Live on Four Legs historians out there. You have to go all the way back to episode 3. The only time we've ever covered the song. It's one of the oldest in their catalog. Love it. is an interesting term since when they released it on Lost Dogs, it was instrumental, and then they would put out the Redux later, and it would have lyrics to it that nobody knew even existed. So yeah, like what's to get this song kind of out of nowhere in a show like this, what's your reaction to that?
Yeah, it's just strange. Like it's a weird song. Like it goes back to the very, very beginning. It's kind of an awkward melody to it. It's not, doesn't really have the groove that a lot of the early songs did. I think this was a song too. If you go back in the Lost Dogs liner notes, I think Jeff talks about how this song almost broke up the band. Like they argued about whether it deserved to be continued, like they were going to continue playing it or not. I think Jeff says, I think him and Stone almost came to blows over it.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I don't love the song. I mean, it's unique for what it is. I mean, we talked about it. We mentioned at the beginning. This is the last time they played it. They haven't brought it back since then. But yeah, it's strange. Like it's just a strange song. Like I don't love it. The instrumental version does nothing for me. The vocal version is only a little better, but I mean, they, again, give them credit. They got through it. They've been playing it a couple of times in 2009, 2010, so that was the time to catch it. But they get through it. Okay, I think it's just another thing that's there for the novelty.
Yeah, here's a good question for you. Do you think if it kind of stayed in 1991 the same way Just a Girl has, do you think that people would be clamoring for it like they kind of are? Like, hey, a lot of people want them to just...
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't even think the Just a Girl people, I don't even think that's a very vocal minority. I think that's...
No, they just want it to want it.
Yeah. I mean, if they were to play it, like, again, Just a Girl's not that great of a song. Like, it doesn't
Brother's
have
a
the
better
same...
song than Just a Girl.
Right. But yeah, it just, like, Just a Girl and Brother, they just don't have that same kind of, like I mentioned, the same kind of groove, the same kind of melody, the same kind of, like, magic that something like Alone has, something like Alive, something like Breath, a lot of those early songs. Like, they, every band has that. You have just songs that are kind of clunkers, and Pearl Jam is unique in that they've stuck around and they've mined their back catalog over and over again, and, people want to hear this stuff. So, but yeah, I think if it had stuck in 1991, I don't think anybody would have missed it.
Okay. Yeah, I've since we're on Just a Girl, and we're probably almost never going to talk about it, only if we cover the off-ramp show someday, which I'm sure we'll do. I've always considered it a discount Alone. It's like they took little pieces from Alone and utilized them, but it just didn't formulate into a song that really is meaningful in any way. So I think Brother is at least a little bit more established, and it's okay. Like, it's not one of my favorite of the Dogs at all, but that 2009 run is pretty cool that they did a bunch of shows, and I was thankful that I was at that Chicago show where they played it, and very early on too in my concert going, that I was able to kind of catch one of the rare songs that they could play. So it's to have a checklist song is nice, but it's not. You're right. It's not one I'm ever going to be clamoring for again. That's for sure.
Yeah, they didn't do the whole family trilogy there. We get one of them
so
a couple of songs later, but yeah, they didn't do the whole part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it came close, but yeah, they did miss the boat. And maybe this is where Ed was just kind of, because going into the song, he's like, we're just making shit up as we go along here. I don't see a written set list. I was trying to look for one earlier. I couldn't find it. But maybe Brother and Daughter were supposed to be back-to-back. And then they added in Glorified G at some point. So
yeah.
Glorified G, by the way, this version, I know that I've been so sour on the song the last couple times we played it. This version I felt a little better about. This felt like it had some spirit to it. It felt like they weren't trying to rush it, and it had a better overall identity to it than it has in the 2000s, I suppose.
Yeah, I can see that. It's another song that doesn't do a lot for me live. Like, I think it sometimes falls flat. But yeah, the vocal the little vocal harmonies at the end, the little counter melodies that they're doing are great. The from your heart from your chest part is great. Ed sounds great on it. So yeah, I mean it does pick up at the end. It definitely felt like they put a little more passion into it than they normally do.
Yeah, I do like this performance too. And again, earlier stuff. I don't think you get. This is really your verses section right here. You don't get too much else besides indifference from the show. I don't think. So
go.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Not very much. We'll talk about that. I want to talk about the album breakdown when we get to the end of the set. But
sure,
it's very strange. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little more later.
All right. In segueing into Daughter, Ed kind of looks towards the top, and he's just addressing crowd, and he's I don't know, he's just addressing bullshit here, and he says, "Sorry, and interrupted the two of you doing your thing, or wait, maybe it was three of you." So he's fucking around, having a good time. But then he talks about the humble beginnings of Daughter, and this is a really cool story.
This is a song that had really small beginnings, and it was just something that Stone played, and we were in a bathroom back when we were staying in really shitty hotels. We were sharing a room in it was like a Motel 8 in Denver. Anyways, we were in the bathroom because the acoustics were better there, and it sounded pretty good off the bat. So you've heard it before, but that's where it came from. It's just small.
Yeah, I love that. We have that scene from the PJ-20 movie where they're in the van working on it, and yeah, that's maybe my favorite part of that movie.
Oh, me too.
Yeah. Period. But yeah, I mean, I went back and looked at the concert chronology, and it turns out they were in Denver on July 25th, 1992. So I think maybe we can place the origins of Daughter to that either that day, or maybe they got into town the night before, stayed in a motel or something and worked on it. But yeah, I love when we get these little snippets of the origins, we can nail down, a time like when or where a song was written.
And to tie a bow on all of that, really, on that day in Denver, that was Brother.
That's right.
So, Nice little connection there that they fought for so long about Brother, and then they wrote another song. They're like, okay, that one can be Brother. Oh, wait, no, this one's going to be Daughter.
Yeah.
Very strum heavy in this version. I felt like this version was it was played a lot harder than usual. I don't know if you felt the same way on it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, Stone from the very beginning is doing a very different strumming pattern than he normally does. He's playing it a lot harder and a little like more on the upbeat than he normally does.
Yeah, it's different. And you know what? I think I sort of fall into this category sometimes with Daughter, that it gets to sound the same too often, and it lasts for 3 minutes, and then you go into the tag and you're interested to see what the tag is. But every now and again, to just change up the tone or change up the rhythm pattern, like I'm all for it. It's a song that's been around forever, so why not? I was going to mention the call and response here. You mentioned the Ramones, and they're doing the Hey Ho, Let's Go, Blitzkrieg Bop, and then they're doing a really, really good WMA tag here. This has firepower on it.
We won the lottery when he was born. A big hand slammed the white man, there is only you. Do no wrong, so clean cut. Dirties his hands, it comes right off. Policeman.
I love this tag, and sometimes you think of the tags and you're just kind of like, okay, tags are tags and they are what they are, and they're just kind of a part of the greater good of the song. Like this can separate itself from the song. It was that good.
Yeah, the transition from the Blitzkrieg Bop section to WMA is great. Like that's one moment where the crowd, you can really hear them gets a really good reaction to. Like everyone's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is cool. And I was gonna say, do we know who the white male Arizonian was? I'm thinking John McCain, but I know he was in the news back then, but I don't recall my current events from 2010.
So they brought this up at the MSG shows too. What happened? There was an immigration bill that was being brought up at the time in Arizona that was extremely controversial. So yeah. I don't remember I think there was another one that was very similar in Florida that happened that year, but Ed was very vocal about it, and that I think that's where white male Arizonian came from.
Yeah, that could have been another reason that they put a little extra feeling behind this tag. Yeah, I agree. It's great.
For sure. Unthought known here. It's a little haphazard, and I think Ed kind of jokes around at the end because it sort of starts off where Ed doesn't know his strumming pattern, and Ed at the end kind of teases like, "Oh, it goes like this, by the way." So I thought that was kind of a fun moment. You always call out the adorable Ed moments, right, and this was one of them.
Yeah, he's so cute when he's self-deprecating.
Yeah, and you get like maybe one other moment that was a little bit like that in the show, and I don't even know if we're going to bring it up, but Unthought was fun. I didn't have really much else to say about it.
Yeah, and again, we talked about it with Do the Evolution at the beginning, where it's kind of that anchor in the middle of those other songs that are a little bit more rare, a little bit more obscure. You need that Do the Evolution in there to kind of anchor it together for the casual fans. You have Even Flow that kind of does that in the middle of the set, around your In Hidings and Insignificance and Supersonic. And then Daughter kind of serves that purpose at the end of the set. You got your Brother Glorified G, a couple other songs coming up that are a little more obscure. So those little anchor songs, the more popular songs, are very well placed in this set to kind of keep it going. Like when there just might be a lull, like when you just might lose those casual fans, then they bring you back. And Daughter into Unthought Known is that too. I think Unthought Known was one off of Backspacer that people immediately latched onto, like, oh, this is going to be the one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the band kind of told you right away when they did that SNL performance that, hey, this is one to pay attention to. We're, this isn't just for the public eye. We're going to play this for years to come here, and this is going to be important to our catalog. And yeah, look, I think you make a good point with some of the bigger songs as anchors, but like this ending to the set to end Leatherman, and Leatherman is super rare at the time. Hadn't been played since 2007. I almost said 2017. And it, I think, is the longest delayed song that had been played at the show. I think it's the song that had been the most time without playing, which is weird because you got Brother and Alone in there. But to go Leatherman into Lucan into Once and end a set, I don't know, man. I think that's a little. I think you needed like a Porch or a Rearview Mirror or even Go that would come up later. I think you needed one of those to really get you amped for what's to come in the encores. I just didn't feel that with especially with Once. I just felt this was kind of an okay version, but nothing to get really excited to end a set.
Yeah, I agree. To a point, I think you're right. Like this is definitely a little bit of anticlimactic end to a set, but they were doing Rearview Mirror and Porch so often, maybe they just wanted to mix it up. And yeah, Once is an interesting song because like we just talked about some early versions where I don't think it translates very well. Like it's the one Pearl Jam song you can totally hear Steven Tyler or Axl Rose taking a shot at, and I don't love that about it, but I do think it's evolved into a little more of a crowd moment kind of song where you can get everyone pumping their fist at the end. And once when they really play that up, and they do that to better effect, I think, at some point. I agree, this is not a show-stopping version of Once. I think that they maybe intended it to be.
Well, if you watch the video, and this is something I was really, intent on looking for in the YouTube video, was that the crowd and the fist pumps in the crowd, I remember specifically the 2 nights later, the first night of MSG, everybody in that crowd during Once was pumping their fist and singing back at them. And it was one of the most incredible things I had seen at a Pearl Jam show up until that point. They pan out and they show the pit and they show the GA, and there's like 6 or 7 people doing it. It's like nobody. And right. I guess that's the criticism on the crowd for this show, is that they just weren't as into it as Boston or even Hartford or MSG's. I mean, some of these songs sound good on the mix, but that moment and seeing that perspective of the crowd and people not being into Once, I think they needed a song that was a little bit more energetic and a little bit more fan favorite to just close with.
Yeah, it might have been something that looked better on paper than it actually worked out in actuality. Yeah, right. I think it was kind of a letdown at the end. Yeah,
and so some shows they can do that. I feel the same with Why Go sometimes, where Why Go could be a great set closer, and then Why Go sometimes they can just kind of run through the 2 minutes of it and you just sort of forget about it. I think it falls in that same category, but now you're going into the encore and you're really getting into some of the big stuff here. So before Just Breathe, Ed is mentioning that a fan wrote in and talked about his father being sick. And I remember this story because, again, MSG Night 1, they would tell the story again, and the father and son would show up to that MSG show. I think they were at the show in Newark as well. And yeah, great stories. And Ed is kind of like talking a little bit about the fragility of life and, how important it is and all that. I think that's a lot of the themes that would later come into Sirens. But great story to get into Just Breathe, and a really, really good version of Just Breathe with everybody's part really being able to shine.
Well, yeah, I always have to mention when that bass part shows up, because it's so good. I love it. Yeah, this is great. I was listening for it and I was not disappointed.
Yeah, I great version of the song, and I don't think maybe that Charlotte. I do remember that Charlotte version that we were both kind of like, ooh, that's a little bit off for us. But there aren't a lot of bad versions of Just Breathe when the whole band is involved.
Right.
But this one, I think, is a little bit of a step above. This would actually be a good Evolution show if we wanted to go that route at some point and ditch the older songs.
Yeah, let us know if that's something you'd be interested in hearing.
Footsteps and Inside Job, look, 2 of my favorites of all time. I think Footsteps was used as a request. And again, you're getting so much from the original 10 era there that the band is really taking a nod to the early days.
Oh, absolutely, and Footsteps, again, sometimes it can be a little more folkier and a little more up tempo, a little poppier, but this is great. Even the harmonica still, I think it adds something to it in this version. It sounds great.
Yeah, I was more focused on what Mike was doing in the solo and his delay effects, and it sounded like a 10 era-esque solo that Mike was doing instead of what they would do now. They would do it a little bit differently, but it just had that. I don't want to. Is it delay? Is it echo? I don't know what it is, but it's that sound that feels like it's 1991 or 1992. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a delay pedal. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Then that's what it is. And they brought it on this version. I didn't even pay attention to the harmonica in this. I thought it was just kind of like it was there. It was fine. But I was really focused on Mike. I thought that Mike had a terrific solo part in this. But Inside Job, I think our patron Matt mentioned that this was his moment. I don't think that there's a bad live version of this song.
Yeah, Inside Job is one that, because it has that really long intro, because of the way the song is structured, it kind of gives everybody a chance to really get into it. It really, pays off that anticipation for when Ed finally, starts singing in the verse. And and everybody knows, he mentions it's a McCready song, but everybody knows, and yeah, it's so much more powerful live than on the record. It's another one. It might be, in retrospect, it might be my favorite song off of Avocado.
It's definitely my favorite song off of Avocado, without a shadow of a doubt. And also, you have to think for the fans in attendance, and this is just sort of a showy thing, but since it is a Mike song, he's playing the double neck guitar, and to bust it out in front of the crowd, that's something that you think Dire Maker and you think Zeppelin and Jimmy Page. That's something that they would do very, very often. That's his nod to that. So
yeah, that 12-string sounds great.
Oh yeah, and it's a very showy thing, but it doesn't happen very often in Pearl Jam. And again, Mike's song, he can do whatever the fuck he wants. Got Some, go end this set, and you know how I feel about Got Some in the encore.
I do.
Don't care for it. I like this combo, though. I think the combo sounds really good together. I'll give it that. And look, it's the Backspacer Tour era. I'm not going to get all furious that they're playing Got Some in the encore of the album that they're still promoting. I don't care. It's 2016 and 2018 that they bring Got Some into an encore. I'm like, no, I can't do this.
And they're doing like the kind of Devo vamping, like Mike's doing the thing where he kind of like doing the little robot moves, and
sure, yeah.
Jeff's doing his thing, and this is the part where we've kind of crested over the encore. We're coming into the home stretch here. And they're having fun. They know this. They're getting ready. They're getting to the end of the show. They're getting to the bread and butter, and they're just having fun. They've gotten past all the hard stuff that they didn't know, all the rare songs. So, yeah, that Got Some just seems like they were just really having fun with it and just letting loose.
This is a very short encore one, by the way. I know
it is.
Inside Job is like a 6-minute performance, whatever it is, but it felt like it went by in a flash.
Yeah, very quick. A lot of short songs.
Maybe that's why. That's because I listened to it 20 minutes before we started talking about it. But that's another story for another time that we don't need to know about. Anything on Go? Go. I love when Go closes a set. I think it fires and amps you up, and it's leading you. It's what I wanted out of Once.
I agree. Go is interesting because it's. You start off with Just Breathe, you get into Footsteps, Inside Job, very build up, kind of slower, mid-tempo songs. You get into Got Some, which is a little more pop rock, and then you blow the roof off with Go to end the encore. It's very well done. It's a very, it's a short encore, like you said, but it's done on purpose to build you up and then hit you in the face very quickly. And yeah, when Go starts, it's always one of the best moments at any show, that first 2 or 3 seconds of Go.
Absolutely. Fires you up immediately. Yeah, I love it. Seen it open, seen it close. I'll take it wherever. Encore 2 is a little longer than Encore 1, just a smidge. And they're having a little bit of fun. And Ed does mention here that he's glad the show happened because it almost didn't. I don't know any other details to that. I either didn't seek it or didn't really know how to research for that, but apparently the show wasn't going to happen. Or maybe in the booking stages they were glossing over Newark. Who knows?
Maybe, yeah.
But he asked for Keely to make the lights brighter. He wants to see the crowd, and they get into Jersey Girl.
Got no time for the corner boy, down on the street making all that noise. Don't want no hoes on 8th Avenue. Tonight I wanna be with you. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna take that ride across the river to the Jersey side. Take my baby to the corner road, and won't hold. The rise down the shore, everything's alright. You're with your baby on the Saturday night. Don't you know that all my dreams come true when I'm walking down the street with you? Sing sha la 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 la, sha la la la, sha la.
It's kind of funny because people really know Jersey Girl from being a Bruce staple in Bruce's live set, but it is not a Bruce Springsteen song, and everybody just assumes, well, he's from New Jersey, so, and it's got the sha-la-la-las, like, it's obviously a Bruce Springsteen. No, it's a Tom Waits song. Sounds nothing like a Bruce Springsteen song.
We know Ed is a big Tom Waits fan.
And Ed's kind of a little bit offended when the crowd starts chanting for Bruce at the end. He's like, oh, yeah, Boom's over there. Yeah, that's Boom. And he says, look, I love Bruce more than the next guy, but this is a Tom Waits song, you guys. And you know how Jersey is. People from Jersey, I've been around people from Jersey before. They're very, they have a lot of pride and they want to celebrate their home state. They also don't want to be wrong. So this is kind of the weirdest combination of that. So, Ed got you on that one.
He gets to play the cool record store clerk who says, nope, it's a little more obscure than what you thought, my friends.
Exactly.
But yeah, I think he's reading the lyrics off of a sheet of paper. I think one reason he has to turn the lights up is so he can read the lyrics that he's written out. And Jeff playing a little stand up bass there. I thought this was really cool. I really enjoyed it. I've never really done the deep dive into Tom Waits. It's something that I always I like it whenever I hear it, but it's not something I've really done a deep dive into. But yeah, I think it's a great song, and it's one of those things. I think they had tagged it one time in like 1998. They had played East Rutherford, tagged it on a daughter, but this is the first full performance. So very cool for those people. This would have been great.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this performance, and it's kind of setting a tone for a more sing-along encore and a more just upbeat kind of manner. It's a nice way to get into this, and it's an ode to a crowd that definitely enjoys their hometown, and two artists that are fantastic in their own right. But there's a story here. What happened to Stone? What happened with his guitar? I don't know.
Yeah, something like, I think maybe it was a tech issue or something, or
did a string break?
He makes it look like, and Ed makes a joke like, "Oh, you're quitting the band now? You're just right. Gonna leave? You're gonna leave after all these years? You're just gonna leave?
20 years, yep.
Yeah."
Yeah, and then he says this would never happen at a Springsteen concert.
That's right.
So
that's right.
All ties together. But yeah, I'm not sure what it was. I'd be very surprised if he had broken a string during Jersey Girl and not during Daughter, or do the Evolution or something.
I think maybe he has to get the next song probably requires a little more of a technical expertise. He probably needed some kind of special equipment that they were maybe having a hard time getting to him in time. I think is probably what it was.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, the next song being You Are. Yeah, it's very involved. The drum machine and all that. But this was the other one that I mentioned before, along with Insignificance. They would bring this back the next night at that MSG show. Encore, this is kind of an ode to, just this whole entire set being completely unpredictable. I don't think they had done a Riot Act song to this point.
Nope, so they're doing that setlist draft. They got to cross all the albums off.
Exactly. So yeah, You Are. I think it's a really good spot for it. And the next three, including You Are, aren't ones that you will see in the Encore 2. This is usually the spot that's reserved for Better Man and Crazy Mary and this is the arena rock section, and they seem to throw out the book on this encore too. And they said, you know what, this is going to be as unique as we did in the main set.
Yeah, and usually you might get one of them. You might get a whipping mixed in with your better mans and blacks, or you might get a life wasted. But yeah, to get three of them like this in an encore 2 is very, very, very rare, very strange.
Yeah, and again, it might just be, coming off of Boston, they were like, all right, well, we did a lot of great stuff in Boston, so what's new? What haven't we done on this tour yet? And this was the first time since the Spectrum show that they played Whipping was played one other time on the tour. Life Wasted was playing only 4 times. They aren't doing these too much, so they want to throw these in as sort of, and again for them probably as a reminder that they can play these songs and that that they like their own music, I suppose, enough to go back and do it.
To give those songs a chance, normally, like you said, you get a better man or a black or a rearview mirror or something, but it's like, hey, we're here, we've got this show sandwiched in between these massive other shows that we're doing. Let's give these little songs a chance to shine.
Right, throw everything on the table that you can. Alive and Indifference, you're kind of changing a little bit of the bread and butter scene here with Indifference coming before Watchtower. This is a move that they made in Hartford as well. This is the exact same thing they did in Hartford. They invited Ben Bridwell onto the stage for Watchtower, and they closed the night that way, which is it's a cool way to close. It's not something I really wanted at the time. I am not a huge All Along the Watchtower fan, and lately we did that San Francisco show a few weeks ago, and that version just blew everything out of the water. This wasn't anywhere in the same vicinity as that, but it was still good. Like, it was still a lot of fun.
Yeah, I thought, and again, this part is party time at this show. Alive, you're getting all the stuff. Ed's climbing on the speakers, waving at people, pointing at people, saying thanks to everybody. Indifference is cool. Like, it's kind of mellow. Again, you hear the crowd a little bit singing along, which was nice. But yeah, that Ben Bridwell from Band of Horses, he looks like the nerdy guy that got invited to the cool party. He's just freaking out on the tambourine. He's so out of place. He's jerking all around. Like, he can't remember when to go sing and when to rock out. Like, he's just so excited to be there. For a guy, it just goes to show, that for a guy who's in a popular band, who's played big shows, for him to kind of be on the stage with Pearl Jam is at another level. He kind of reverts back to that kind of fan that we all would be. It was interesting to see. But yeah, again, we talk about it when they bring people from the opening band on stage. It's not it's not because they're going to be technically great. It's because it's a party and you're saying thanks to everybody and you're sending all these people home happy.
Right, and the one thing I did want to bring up, they've been able to elevate opening bands, and I just Band of Horses aren't in the same category as like a My Morning Jacket or Kings of Leon or Slater Kinney are, where when they opened for Pearl Jam and Pearl Jam kind of did the same thing, invited them on stage to do a Rockin' or a Leave In Here or something like that. Like, that really elevated those bands. I don't really feel that happened with Band of Horses. They toured with them for most of this tour, and they didn't really see that much of a spike in popularity. They've been fine, and they're okay. They're not one of my favorite bands, but I just don't. I think the other three really saw a spike in their popularity after opening up for them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
All right, let's talk about our 3 favorite moments from the show.
Yeah, so I kind of teased it at the beginning. I'm going to go number 3 is going to be the daughter story. Just getting a little insight into when and where it was written, and then the whole thing with the WMA tag, like the Blitzkrieg Bop thing, the call and response thing is great. So the whole atmosphere, the whole scene around Daughter is my number 3. Number 2 is Jersey Girl. Thought it was nice. Kind of a cool song for them to do, and they had kind of a long encore break before that. I gotta think they probably ran through it backstage to make sure they knew it. But yeah, it was very cool. Tom Waits cover, the only time they've ever played it in full was awesome. but I'm going to stick with it. My number one's still Alone from this show. Like, to get it that early, to get such a really good version. I think that was, we talked about all the 10 era songs. I think that was the standout for me.
Yeah, I agree that the Alone was the best of the bunch. Footsteps was fantastic as well, but next to Brother, I think Alone definitely had the standout moment. I'm gonna say, it's sort of a difficult top three, but I'm gonna say here that my number 3 is gonna be the WMA tag. I loved. I thought they were really in the zone on it. Number 2. There's a lot of this stuff at this show that, like, it would be, like, all tied for number 3, and then, like, one thing that I think is above and beyond number 1. Like, I can say that I really like Go as the set ender. I really like Footsteps. I really liked, even Supersonic was really good. Insignificance was great. I would even say Insignificance could be part of this top 3. Yeah, sure. Insignificance was number 2 for me, sure. But number 1 is Of the Girl. Just starting your show like that, and getting off to that just sort of unique start, and that people don't really know where it's going to go, and then later on that it's going to take you in all sorts of different directions. Yeah, that's what I love about this band. That's what I love about these shows, just the unpredictability coming from it. And anytime after 2000 you get Of the Girl opening a show, yeah, throw it all out. It's a dartboard show after that. And really, my top, I didn't want to say it, but, like, really, Brain of J is there too, but I didn't want to be a Brain of J homer today. So, the top 3 were just fantastic from the show. But curious to hear your rating, because I have one that I'm pretty set on. I don't think I can be deterred either way. So okay. What do you got?
Yeah, this is tough. Like, I've vacillated back and forth between like a 7 and an 8, because here's the thing, like, if you love the 10 era, right? Like, you love those songs, like you get Alone, Even Flow, Brother, Footsteps, Alive, like a lot of early, really good, like a lot of 10 era stuff that you don't normally get. So if you're into that
let
stuff,
let me ask you this, though.
This is a great set.
Would you call this a 10 era show?
I wouldn't, not necessarily, but it's definitely, it's heavy on that stuff.
Okay.
Because here's the other thing. Where's Vitalogy? Where's No Code? Like,
No Code is nowhere
Vitalogy songs? 1 minute of No Code? Like,
right.
I thought that's more the stuff that I think makes for better 2010 era shows, is when they focus more on those middle albums.
But you also have, 4 Yield songs and 2 binaural songs, a Riot Act. Like, you're hitting every, like, although Brother and Alone and Footsteps are all in this, I consider this like a show for the middle 90, like late 90s, early 2000s. Like, that's what I think about when I think about this show more.
Okay.
Just because there's so many of those songs. But I get where you're coming from.
So, but what I'm saying is, if you're into that 10 era, those songs, if you're into Backspacer, obviously, because this is the Backspacer Tour, if those 2 albums are high on your album list, like, say, there are a lot of people that those 2 albums are their favorite Pearl Jam albums, right? Backspacer and 10. You would probably rate this very high, like a 9, 9.5, because you get a lot of great versions of those songs. Very, very cool. Also, if you're into the Serious Collector part of it, you get a lot of really rare stuff that they don't normally play. Even one song that they haven't played since. Getting Brother, getting Jersey Girl. We talked about all the rare and kind of a little more obscure songs that they played. If you're into that stuff, you'd be more likely to give this a high rating. For me, it didn't quite get to the classic level that I give like 9s, 9.5s to. So I went back and forth between giving it like a 7 or an 8. I'm going to give it a 7.5, which is perfectly fine. Like, I enjoyed listening to it, but there may be only one or two things that I would go back to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's fair. And again, I think it's funny that we have kind of different reactions to this show, because when I have seen the set list and think of the set list, I just like think, boy, there are 4 Yield era songs on this, and they all come very early on to hit you with Brandon J and do the evolution in 2 and 3, and Binaural at number 1. Like that, to me, you don't see that at all anymore. That's a thing of the past. I don't know if that's ever even happened since. So I think of those things, and I think of how much I love Yield, and that's why I had such a tough time picking 3 songs, because everything was just on the same level. It was good, and it was kind of right in my wheelhouse. Again, like it's sort of that San Francisco show that we did a couple of weeks ago. It's sort of a light version of that. Like that San Francisco show was like kind of a show for the ages, while this is more of a good show that had a lot of the same qualities as that Night 3 show. I'm going to give it an 8 because I just enjoyed listening to it. I thought, it took about 2 hours and 15 minutes to listen to. It was an easy listen, which is a positive thing when it comes to bootlegs. And it just has songs that that you're not going to hear in other bootlegs. So it's always a positive thing when you're going through and you're like, oh, Glorified G and Brother and Supersonic and Immortality and In Hide. And like, it just has all of that stuff that just sort of makes the recipe for the unpredictability that Pearl Jam can put in their set list. So yeah, I think 8 is perfectly acceptable for it.
Okay, so not as far off as maybe you thought.
Yeah, no, I didn't. Again, I gave San Francisco a 9.5, and that had very similar kind of main set where they were playing around with different kind of deep cut songs like Sad and Light Years and things like that, but still hitting all the eras in the same way. This had the same, it just didn't have the same feel as that show did. It didn't feel as big.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that.
All right. That's another show in the books, 2010. I don't think we've done a 2010 show in a long time, so good to get back on that wagon and touch upon all the eras. But next week, we're touching up on an era that, oh boy, this is, to me, 95 is Pearl Jam at their peak. Yeah, I know 92 is huge, but you get more in the arsenal in 95. You get Jack in the band. I really feel like the Vitalogy 95 era is the best. And here's the thing, though, 95 is also the Mirrorball era, and that's where we're really going to focus our attention to next week. Neil Jam, Dublin, Ireland, 1995. There was so much going on in this year, and we'll have a lot to talk about. And remember, if you are on Patreon or about to be on Patreon, if you wish to go and subscribe as you're listening to this today, we do have the Neil Jam Forum that's coming tomorrow on the 20th on Thursday. So we're going to get some people to talk about the show and kind of, get some opinions on that. And we'll use some clips for that on our episode next week for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be great, and that's something we haven't really touched on. It's going to be great to kind of take a break from the regular songs and talk about some Mirrorball songs in 1995. Yeah, I can't wait. It's going to be a lot of fun.
I mean, I'm just going to spoil everybody. I think it's going to be a 10 just because it's not going to be something we ever listen to again. So it's my one time it's the one time that they got to play with Neil. It's special. So yeah, we'll get so much to talk about, and it's really one that we're going to have to talk about just about every song, you'd think, right?
Oh yeah, there's a lot of extended versions. Like I think they were doing some 20-minute versions of Scenery and 12-minute versions of Big Green Country, and a lot of that stuff they really went off on. So yeah, it's gonna be
Piece
a
of Love,
lot of
I think
fun.
was pretty long.
Yeah.
And there are some that were on this bootleg that weren't played at the show, but were still circulated. So we'll maybe we'll throw that in as a Patreon extra, or we'll do something. Maybe we'll just talk about them for the regular episode. We'll see what we're doing. So, yes, we are doing Last Man Standing again next Thursday on the 27th. If you're interested in that, hit us up on social media or hit us up on our email at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com. And we're same thing. It's going to be the same kind of question structure, and we'll go until there's one fan standing. And if you're going to be like Kieran, then you gotta put some mustard on your fastball, because he did not throw one ball. They were all strikes out there. So interested to see if he's going to compete again and to see if anybody's going to dethrone him. Bagel, I'm looking at you, buddy.
Yeah, well, those are always fun, and thanks to everybody who participated in the last one. Hopefully they can all come back for this one. Yeah, it's going to be great.
Yep. All right. Excited for next week, and we're very close to our two-year anniversary too. So that'll come after Neil Jam, and there may or may not be some surprises. We'll keep you hanging on that one too. So, all right, this may be the end. I know. I can't do that. But sorry guys. Sorry. That's just what it is. You'll find out in due time, but it's going to be good. This may be the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, I miss you already, and I miss you always. Thank you very much for Kieran and Matt for requesting this show. It was a very fun listen, and thanks to John and I for sharing it with you guys. That was it. That was Newark. We will see you back for Neil Jam next week.
We're just making it up as we go.
That's right.
Boom Gasper, is that what you're saying? Boom Gasper on the keyboard. Oh, nobody loves Bruce more than I do, but Tom Waits wrote that song. You should know that. 20 years and it's ending tonight. This would never happen at a Bruce Springsteen concert. They're tight.